always forget, but now I am. So tonight we're going to talk about basically double the dreams and double the degrees. And I feel like everything that I've done at Twiniversity has been through experience. And so now that my twinnies are in college, I feel like the proof is in the pudding, right? I never talked about, having toddlers before I had toddlers or teens before I had teens.
You just hanging on
I
the
feel like
railing.
you really
That's
need to be able to experience what's going on in order to really speak with experience, for lack of a better term. So I got Dan. Dan, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so tonight, what you could do if you have questions, put them up in the chat. That is the way that it's going to be the easiest. But of course, if you want to raise your paw, you can and ask any questions. So feel free. So
Yeah, thanks.
tonight, what we're basically going to cover is I'm going to introduce you to Dan, who is over there to my left or right. I can't tell because it's weird on camera. And we're going to talk about understanding the cost of college, because I think this is a big one that you guys might it's a little misleading of what you're reading out there, but I got some great stats for us. We're going to talk about different ways to save, maximizing those savings. We got to talk about financial aid because hopefully the twinnies are going to get full scholarships. That's what we want. But just in case, we're going to talk about our investment strategies and college savings. And without any further ado, you guys could see Dan over there to my side, but this is Dan. This is Dan Paikin. I've been playing with him for well over a decade now. He is single-handedly one of the biggest reasons why my husband and I were really prepared to get our twinnies in, just involved in college, right? When I first met Dan, I remember saying that they're both going to have to go to city universities, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, right? So they're going to both have to go to city universities, and that's all that we're going to plan for. But Dan really, really set me straight. So if you guys aren't going to be able to stay on the whole time, you could take a screenshot of this right here, right now, so that you have his information. We'll give it to you at the end too, but I know that it's around bedtime for you, some of you, depending on where you are in the universe. All right, Dan, I'm going to your slide number 3. If you want to say
Yeah.
hello to everybody and give us a little bit of the breakdown, homeboy.
Well, thanks, Nat. Yeah, it's crazy that your kids are in college now because I have known you. It's actually been 13 years since we met, working with you and working with Twiniversity, which I enjoy doing and will keep doing as long as you keep having me back. But my relationship with Twiniversity is special. I've made so many clients, so many friends. Our relationship is key. And yeah, I remember way back when we were talking about college for your twins, and here we are. They're in college now. So time flies. But yeah, so I've been doing this for 17 years now, which is crazy to say. About 9 years ago, started my own team called Tempest Financial Group, and has grown it. We're up to 17 people. Really what I do is work with people like all of you, help them with their individual planning. Different things also, I'll work with business owners and things like that, but this is really kind of my bread and butter is individual planning, sort of this personal CFO approach. So we're going to talk about college planning today. And it's a very specific topic. So I think that before we get into college planning, I think it's important to take a step back to talk about really my approach that I take whenever I work with anyone. College planning is important, but there are conversations that need to occur before we get to college planning. Really with every client, everyone is in a different situation, and it's really important to just get to know people. So a lot of where I spend my time in just beginning is just understanding people's situation, understanding their goals, and then understanding their finances. So really important to get organized and kind of look at your financial world from a big picture perspective, have a lot of questions, understand what do you have, what do you owe, what does your cash flow look like, what's your protection, all of those things. The next area that I go philosophically is protection, always. So protection is key. I always say it to Natalie in her classes, but protection is something that when you need it, you can't get it. So it's important you're buttoned up early on. And this is things like liability protection. What if you're involved in a lawsuit? things like disability insurance. What if you get sick or hurt and can't work? And certainly life insurance. What happens if, God forbid, something awful happens? So that actual conversation philosophically needs to come before we start talking about college planning, because if you think about it, we could save all we want and have these great plans for college, but God forbid something happens to you or one of you, all of that is out the window. So hence why protection has to come first. Okay, after protection, the emphasis that I have with my clients is really all about saving. It is about cash flow, and this really is the biggest factor in someone's financial success or failure. Okay. The amount you save is always going to be more important than where you save it or the rate of return you get, right? Your rate of savings trumps your rate of return. So, really, what I want from my clients from the get go is to become world class savers, right? We want to create systems that help you to save where you don't even realize you're saving. But the reality is what is the ultimate best way to pay for college? Well, it's really just being a proven saver. If you've shown that you can save throughout the years, you're going to be in very good shape for college. And, look, ideally, what is the best way to pay for college? The answer is cash flow. Not easier said than done. And there absolutely is likely going to be some form of savings. But if you could pay for college through just cash flow, that's ideal, because what that means is all of the other saving that we've done is growing and it's compounding. And ideally, we don't want an asset that's growing and compounding and then just deplete it down to zero after 18 years or so. Ideally, we want it to keep growing and compounding and have it for other purposes. Again, that's ideal. But the reality is what I often say to my clients, if you have an asset that's doing really well, it's almost like your most illiquid asset because you don't really want to touch it because it's doing really well and you're going to miss out on what it would have been if you had taken it. So again, that's why it really all starts and ends with just saving, less important where you're saving and getting a good consistency to save. Okay?
Dan, let's talk about the understanding the cost of college. So we pulled up some of these statistics here. And when, obviously this is going to change every year, but these are the most recent statistics that we got. And this, by the way, is an average. So, of course, if your kids are going to go to an Ivy League, believe it or not, they're actually less expensive than like regular private schools. Weirdly, I don't understand why. But the thing is we wanted to give you kind of a general estimation because when people ask Dan questions, they usually say, like, how much am I going to save? And what should I do? And what is that? So we pulled up these statistics. Dan, do you want to talk about this, the slide that's up?
Yeah. So Nat is talking here about average price of schools. You're seeing four-year college in 2020 and 2002 is 19,806. So I'm going to share with you even some updated numbers that I found. Here's an interesting one. I went all the way back to 1816. Do you know how much college was in 1816?
Is that when my
It was,
husband went to school, Joe?
yeah,
Dan, is
exactly.
that what it was?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. College was $57.50 a year back in 1816. And just so you think, if you adjust that for inflation over time, that would mean that college today would be $1,257. So what you should be quickly getting is that college has outpaced inflation,
Mm.
and by a lot. So 30 years ago, just 30 years ago, back close to when I went to college, in-state tuition was 13,000. Today it's 24,000. That's an 83% increase in 30 years.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Public in-state is 24,000. It was 17,520 years ago. Public out of state is up to 26,000. Private schools are up. The average is now for a private school is 56,000 a year. 20 years ago, it was 43. 30 years ago, it was 33,000. So one big takeaway here is if you're planning for college, you should not plan for what college costs today. because it won't cost it
Yeah.
what it is today. If your child is going to college in 10, 15, 18 years from now, you have to account for the increases, and the increases are even more than what inflation is, because typically college costs have outpaced inflation. So, newsflash, college is expensive.
Just a
Um,
smidge, just a little hint. So with right now, and it is never going there, the prices are never going down. So the estimated it's going to be a little bit under 300,000 for your 20s to both go to four-year colleges. So, and that's of course not taking into consideration, scholarships and financial aid that they may be getting. But in addition, we do want to take into consideration fees and room and board and supplies and books and stuff like that. And of course, we know that those prices are going to go up too, in addition to tuition. Dan, could you try to stay in the center of our little screen a little bit more?
oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. You
My
keep.
screen.
No, now you're all the way over. Now you're good. There you go. I
Okay.
missed you. You're too cute to not see the whole
There we go.
time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go to our next slide because I know that Dan wants to talk about this, and I now have figured out how to do the slide changes. So now we're all good. So
Go
here we go.
ahead.
So double the degrees. This is about the different savings options that we have going on for us.
Yes. One thing I wanted to say, because a question that gets asked is it worth it? Like, is all this money really worth it? I thought this was interesting too. I found this. Most people that go to school, only a quarter of the graduates actually go into a field that matches their degree.
Hmm.
So, like many times, like when you're in school, you don't even go into that field. There is definitely a higher degree for math and science. And so college may be worth it a little bit more if you're going in that field. But in short answer, is it worth it? Yes, it is the best route for upward mobility. The fact is that those who have college degrees tend to their income tends to be 50 to 75% more than people who don't have college degrees.
Mm.
So, in short, the argument is that it is worth it. And that being said, a lot of people have realized that because the demand is still there. Applications are still up every year. So, there's no reason to think college is going anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be a big part of what we think.
It's almost
So,
expected now, Dan, too. Like I feel like no matter what jobs you apply for, even there's jobs for like secretaries and administrative assistants that still want you to have an associate's. So, and
yeah,
I think when I was doing research on that, just from my own kind of hiring within Twiniversity, specifically, they were saying that the degree doesn't just show the education, but it also shows that they worked towards something and finished it. So
for sure.
it was a lot about that too. So now, Dan, I know that when people are thinking about savings, that there's a lot of different options. And so you and I have covered a lot personally, but what are some of the different options that families have at this moment in 2024, right? What are some of the different college savings opportunities that we have?
Yeah. So, paying for college, again, it is very situational, and specific to everyone wherever they're at. But a kind of a traditional way to think about paying for college is a third, a third, a third. And this is the concept that a third of it comes from income, a third of it comes from saving, and a third of it can come from loans. So, kind of talked a little bit about income, right?
Mhm.
That's just cash flow, the money that's coming in. We can focus in a little bit more on savings, and then we can talk a little bit about loans or aid, things like that. So, let's talk a little bit about saving and the things to save into. So, the most popular form of college savings is a 529 plan. Okay. The way 529 plans work is you contribute to them with post tax dollars. They can be invested, they're typically some investment fund choices. They grow. And if the use of those dollars is specifically for college purposes, tuition, room and board, things like that, the growth of it is you are not taxed on that.
Mm.
Um, uh, However, if you were to use that money for anything other than college, you would pay the tax on that and you would pay a 10% penalty on those earnings. So a 529 is a valuable way to save for college, but just keep in mind it's a single purpose vehicle.
Mhm.
Okay, that's really all that it is for, and certainly it shouldn't be the only place you're saving because there's other things you need to save money for. Um, a couple things about 529s. Um, they can be opened by a parent or a grandparent or a relative. The maximum you can contribute is based on the gift amount for the year. Right now, the maximum is 18,000 that you can gift to a 529. There are ways to super fund it. They will allow you to do 5 years in advance. So you can do a lump sum of 5 years. That's the maximum you can do. There are some tax benefits beyond the growth of it. Some states will give you a tax deduction. Some states will give you a tax credit. This would affect your state income taxes, not your federal. This is your state income. Again, it depends on the state you're in. Some states do it, some states don't. I live in New Jersey. There's not a lot of benefit to them, but there can be depending on the state that you live in.
Mhm.
Um, they can be really used for college, really anything fees, room and board. You can also use it not for college. Recent law was passed that allows you to use it for um, grade school. You can use it from kindergarten to high school. If they're in a private high school, the maximum you can use is $10,000 from that 529. Can also use it for vocational school, technical school. And interesting enough, you can even use some of your 529 to pay student loans.
Hmm.
So up to 10,000 can go towards student loans. Another law that they just passed in the Secure Act was that you can now, if you have excess in a 529, you can roll that excess into a Roth IRA. The maximum there is 35,000. So if you kind of put too much into it and there was leftover, you can roll it into a Roth IRA now. You never used to be able to do that. Questions that will often come up on 529s is, if I don't use it for one child, can I roll it to another child? The answer is yes, you can do that. Um, Another question that gets asked is, what if I change states? I have a New York 529. I moved to California. Mostly you can do it once a year. You have the ability to change states of that 529, so you can do that. So 529, very popular. It can be a very valuable way to pay for college. Again, the way I talk to my clients is you just don't want to have an over reliance on it. There's a lot of uncertainty. Your kids can get scholarships. College can be very different, and you could get caught with just too much money in there. And again, there's other ways to save for college. And also, obviously, you can't use those dollars for anything along the way. If an opportunity comes your way to invest in a business or some opportunity, that money is sort of locked up. That's in a 529. So that's sort of the pros and cons of 529s. Along the line, there's other things. There's something called the Coverdale, the Educational Savings Account. Similar to 529s, they're tax deferred, same sort of thing. There are more limitations. The maximum you can contribute to those are 2,000 a year,
Mhm.
and you at higher income levels you get phased out of that. So kind of 529 is just kind of the more popular one. So those are the main college specific ones. Now, what I always say to my clients, similar to retirement when it comes to 401ks, is, well, college doesn't care where the money comes from,
Hmm.
right? Same thing for retirement. Retirement doesn't care where the money comes from. And there are other ways to save and be able to use those dollars for college. Um, you could open up a custodial account. This is kind of what affluent people will often do, is open an account for their children. They gift it to their account. They could use that for college. And then the child has this account afterwards for life. The parents can have an investment account. You can use that to pay for college. You're not getting the tax benefits that you get with a 529, but it's like you can use that account for things before college and after college, but absolutely, you can use that to pay for college. Roth IRAs are another way. You could technically use that for college. Again, depending on when you take it out, you could be taxed on the growth of a Roth IRA. So kind of a similar situation as using a 529 without getting the benefit of the 529. One way, which we've talked about a lot, is using life insurance products to pay for college. This would be permanent life insurance. And permanent life insurance, again, this is traditionally meant for protection of your family, leaving a legacy, things like that. Permanent insurance has an added component where there's a savings component, which is called cash value, and it accumulates over time. And you can use that money for really any purpose you can think of. You could use it before college, after college. You could use it for retirement planning and investment. You can withdraw from it, but you can also borrow against it. So another way to save for college is actually using your life insurance. And that can be an efficient way because maybe it means you don't need to have the cost of term insurance if you have permanent insurance. So you're getting rid of that cost. Another benefit, which we'll get into a little bit when we start talking about financial aid, is life insurance is not a recognized asset on a FAFSA form. When you're looking at applying for financial aid, it does not count. They don't recognize it. You can have millions of dollars of cash value in your as an asset, and it's not going to count against you for financial aid. So one of a unique thing that relates to life insurance. So there you have it. Those are some different ways. Another just something to be aware of is grandparents. Maybe towards the end, they will want to transfer some of their wealth to their kids and grandkids. There are estate limitations as to how much you can transfer while you're alive. If a grandparent writes a check directly to the college institution, does not count as a gift. It does not, there's no tax implications. So something else, if a grandparent wants to help out with college, that's a way they could do that where there's no tax implications for them. There we go. So that is
those are all that's different ways to save. The life insurance is a great one. And guys, FAFSA is a form that it's required by every college, whether your kids are getting financial aid or not, and you have to fill it out every single year. And it's so ridiculous. And it used to be much more time consuming than it is now. Every year it seems to be getting a little bit better, but the whole thing, Dan, I didn't know that I never thought about the life insurance policy not counting. Grrr is what I say about that. All right.
Also, like annuity products, there's like there's a world out there
God
how to
help
get
us.
nice financial aid. So
good times.
But it is a good segue to get into financial aid because I think that's where we were
Yeah.
going next.
Well, actually, the next one was talking about maximizing the college savings. Hold on, let me just make sure before I put it on screen with us. Yeah. So do you have that slide, Dan? About setting realistic savings goals and not to kind of jump over. See if you got that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this goes back to saving in general. I mean, I want my clients saving 20% of their gross income every year. And that could be 529, that could be a 401k, that could be an investment account, that could be cash. I want my clients saving 20% really throughout their accumulation years. I know that's not that's not easy for everybody. Everyone's in a different situation, but that's what makes a world-class saver. If you can be saving that amount. Now, yes, can some of that be earmarked for college? Absolutely. You can use things like 529s and things like that. But that's how I look to maximize how to save for college is just save your 20%. Maximize what you're saving. We can use life insurance. We can use investment accounts. We can use 529s. The reality is, I don't know the best way to pay for college 18 years from now. I can't tell you. I don't know. I don't know if your kid's going to get a scholarship. I don't know what the stock market's going to do. I don't know what interest rates are going to do. There's a lot of unknowns. But what I do know is I want to create options. I want to have options available so that at that time, when it does come time to pay for college, the best option is going to present itself. I'm always cautious of locking in decisions right now for something that's going to happen 18 years from now and not really having any other choice to go from that option. So that's my approach to saving and to college.
All right. So now let's jump into financial aid.
Yes. All right. So there's really three types of financial aid. There are grants, which everyone likes. That's basically like free money. There is work study, and this is oftentimes what colleges will offer you, sort of a way to work part-time on campus or off campus, but a way to cover college expenses. And then there are loans. There are federal loans, there are private loans. When you are applying for these colleges, once you are accepted, the college is going to get back to you with a financial aid package.
Mhm.
The way to determine that financial aid package is that FAFSA application. So they're kind of doing, along with some other questions that they may ask you. But the FAFSA application, as you said, it's required. There's really not a lot of downside to filling out that FAFSA application. All it really does is it's getting a good sense of your financial situation. When the offering that you get for aid, the biggest factor is really your income, right? So that is what's going to be the biggest determination of what you qualify for. When your household income is below $150,000, there's a lot more offered to you, but that's not to say you won't get offers above that. Your assets are important too. They will take into account the assets that you have, but it's less so. I think it's only about 5% they take that into account, and your income is more like 20% for how they account for that. So let's see, where am I? It's pretty easy to fill out there. It's linked to the IRS, so it's not like you can lie. They can see your income from the IRS. It's also there are private loans also, and oftentimes when you get private loans, you're required to do the FAFSA application also. So there are two types of loans. There's federal loans and there are private loans. Federal loans are good. They're typically at low interest rates. Oftentimes there's forbearance rules as it relates to federal loans. There's lenient payback provisions. And there's even the possibility of forgiveness, like we're hearing right now. Our good friend Joe Biden is trying to eliminate some of this student loans. So that's only on federal loans, not on private loans. So private loans are another way that you can try and get college. That's going in a different direction. This could make sense. Sometimes if the federal loan option isn't significant a lot, you might have to go private loan.
I just want to interrupt here for a second. The interesting thing about loans is that I'm so happy that you guys are joining us, because what's so fascinating is that, like, I'm not saying that my parents didn't love me, right? But they didn't think about this, and they thought about it a little bit. So they actually had a little bit of money for my sister's college, but then were broke by the time they got to me. So it was kind of left up to me, and I'm glad that I had a pretty good head on my shoulders, because it's really fascinating to me that 18-year-olds, like my daughter's friends and my son's friends, they can't smoke, they can't drink, but they could take a $200,000 loan. And it's really interesting that, you don't even know who you are. And yet the government is like, sure, how much do you want? The state, the city, whoever you're getting your money from, a union, whatever. It's just absolutely interesting to me that you could do stuff like that. So the fact that you guys are like, okay, let's not even put our 20s in this situation, it's just really admirable. And that's kind of, you guys are in the same mindset that my husband and I were in a long time ago. And it's really, the sooner you could do it, the better. So Dan, I want you to also talk about like scholarships and how do we find scholarships and grants. And I could talk about some of the twin specific stuff, because believe it or not, there are actually quite a few twin scholarships out there. So yeah, so New York's, a lot of state organizations have scholarships just for 20s. So look up, like, if I know that Murray's in Florida, so you look up Florida State Organization for parents of twins. but every state organization has one, and there's usually no limit on where your kids could apply. So if I
Yep.
want my kids to write an essay for the California state, of course, they're going to get preferential treatment for that. But then there's also random scholarships. Like there's hospitals that do a lot of work with twin to twin transfusion syndrome and things like that, that specifically have multiple birth scholarships. So if you just Google that, we've been in the process of putting one together for us, but it changes literally every year, and we just don't have the woman and manpower to really keep up with those. But Dan, that's just some of the scholarships. Like, where would people go to
Yeah.
specifically find scholarships?
Um, Great. One, I just wanted to mention, there's an important point when we were talking about financial aid. One of the questions they ask is about multiple children you have that
Mhm.
are going to be in college and have tuition, and that will affect financial aid. And obviously, parents of twins, you're very potentially going to have multiple children that are in college, so that could benefit you in financial aid applications. So yeah, I mean there are a lot. There's a lot of different scholarships and aid outside of the norm. Certain high schools can offer scholarships. Um, Colleges specific will offer specific scholarships. There is something called merit-based aid. So if your child is a good student, they can qualify for merit aid. A lot of states will give this for if you go to an in-state college, you can get up to $8,000 in merit aid based on your grants, based on your grades. Um, Another thing that's obviously ideally you want your children to be good students, but it can give you leverage because there is negotiating with
Mm.
colleges. It's not kind of like what it is, but you have the ability to say, well, look, we got into this other school and they're offering us this. If you'll bring it down a little bit, maybe we'd be inclined to go to your school. Also, just the choosing the right school is important. If you have a good student and maybe they go apply to a college that maybe is a little bit below them, that college is going to want your child and they may be willing to offer a little bit more of a package. You might say, you know what, it's worth it. If they're going to give us this big of a discount, that might make sense. Unfortunately, many private colleges, can be what's called admissions blind or admissions aware. And that is, they will account for, if they know, there's a lot of financial aid that's going to be wanted, that can affect whether they accept you or not.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that is the truth. So some colleges don't account for that and some do. So, I think it's just really important to cost reward, like we're talking about loans. Well, you have to really evaluate, man, if I have this big a loan, is it worth it? And by the way, I've worked with residents and people in medical school. I've seen student loans for $500,000. You wouldn't believe it. So, that hangs over you for a very long time. And you really have to evaluate, is this worth it? Is it worth it to go in there for what you want? Is there going to be a return on that investment? Um, but yeah, and then look, it's this is about just really comes down to
Yeah.
saving and sucking money away.
Well, a few things that I want to add to that when we were going through the process that Dan gently reminded us of, like the negotiating. But truthfully, my daughter goes to a college that my deposit wasn't down on. So my daughter had chosen another college. We put the deposit down, and another college emailed her, and I was like, it's a done deal. And they're like, well, what if we offer you, they basically made my daughter an offer that she couldn't refuse. And not only was it financially better for our family, but she also felt so wanted by that other school, because that other school came after her specifically. And
Yep.
another thing that you probably will not remember when it comes time to start applying for colleges, but often my kids, I have a son and a daughter, and often there's the, school counselor, social worker at school would say, hey, we think you should apply for this school. There's a lot of waivers for applying to colleges that are out there. And if my kids both had an interest, I'm going to be totally honest, I used that waiver for both kids. And we got to apply for a bunch of colleges. I think they both applied to about 12 colleges each. And when the offer started rolling in, which was really, really, really nice to get that kind of that first yes, but we use that, like Dan said, as leverage for other schools. But when your kid wants to go to this one school, no matter how much leverage you have, if they oversold it at the open house, there's no going back. So always just remember they are just kids, but ultimately it really is their decision. We just have to be able to support that decision. So Dan, I'm just going to go to the last slide with the conclusion and leave it open for Q&A. So I do kind of, want you to talk about like when we should start thinking about doing this. How do we start doing about this? Who do we go to? What is the process? And guys, I put up Dan's information again, so it's right there for you.
Yeah, well, going back to the beginning, the time to do this is now. We have no time machine, so we can't go back in time. And time matters with money. It only goes in one direction. And if you kind of think about compounding, just imagine like a hockey stick shaped curve. So the earlier you start it, the closer you get to that takeoff phase. So this is about getting a plan. And like I said, I spend a lot of time around cash flow. It's not easy to save. We are often our worst enemies. What we try and do is create ways to make it easier for you. We focus more on, let's be really clear on what are your expenses? What does it take to live your life? And then we can default and kind of save and we don't even realize that we're saving. So, a lot of this is just behavioral finance. We're going at 1,000 miles a minute. We're trying to pay the bills. We got a million things. Money just gets lost in the wash. But if you can create a system and a consciousness around your cash flow and around savings, it makes a huge difference over time.
It really does. And I know that when we started working together, Dan, that it was a fairly simple process that I came in and I spoke with you guys. What's the process now? And like, how does it work? Honestly, how does it work virtually? Right? Because I know we sat down and you could always see like my expression and be like, ah, here. And you read my body language and you're like, bah. So how does it work? Like, how do you work with families in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed. I remember going into Little Italy and speaking at Twiniversity there, and most of my clients were in the New York area, the
Yeah.
tri-state area. I I very, very rarely meet with clients face to face anymore. And it's almost all virtual. And that's kind of caused my clients are all over the country now. I mean, every meeting I do, I'm doing math to figure out time zones of when this would be for them and for me. So, yeah, I mean, Zoom has been a huge benefit. Just remote meetings have been a huge benefit to my business, and it just allows me to work with anyone, anywhere, at any time. And yeah, I mean, I'm open. I mean, look, my mission is to help people with their finances, give them peace of mind so that they can go and be worried about their jobs and their kids and be thinking about that and that they're not worried about their finances. So I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone. I will help anyone. If you'd like to speak to me, by all means, reach out and and we can talk, learn a little bit about your situation. I can give you some guidance to go in the right direction.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, you could either take yourself off mute, you could pop them in the chat. But I know that there's so much to talk about when it comes to college savings, which is so funny because Dan, do you remember that I was like, we're not saving for college? How many times did I say that to you?
Yep. They'll have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah, I didn't give a shit. I gotta be honest. I was just like, too bad. They have to figure it out. And the more that I thought about it, and the more that truthfully, I'm gonna blame my god sister on this one because I was watching her pay her student debt. And I watched her like struggle, and I would be like, "Are you crazy? Like, you graduated 25 years ago. how are you? And she's like, Nat, she went to NYU. She went to school for journalism. Yes, she got a good job, but then she hated the absolutely despised the corporate rat race. So ended up becoming a New York City public school teacher. But that didn't matter because she was just really just under a rubble pile of debt. And I
Yeah.
saw how it affected her Christmases, her family time. And I'm not even talking about family vacations. That wasn't even on the list for her. And her husband had just as much debt. And I'm like, is this insane? But that's what happens. I mean, when you are the first generation to go to college, you did not have people thinking about that because they didn't have that debt. So it
Right.
wasn't a big deal to them. So when I think I actually got on board first with college savings and making sure that we did that. And then Jen got on board right after us because she was like, I'm going to be paying for my student loans and I'm going to be paying for my kids. But interestingly, my husband was like, which Dan, I don't think you brought this up, but student debt cannot be part of a bankruptcy. So if your kids ever have $400,000 in debt and they're like, well, who cares? I'm just going to go bankrupt. That doesn't matter. That does not
Right.
get forgiven. So that comes with you for your entire life. You are just really like my god sister under that rubble. And even my sister, who is didn't even finish college and decided, I swear to you, she wanted to be a pottery major at a private college. I seriously, there's so many discussions that I want to turn back the time. And she works for a lighting company now, but she would, Dan, a pottery major. What's my sister doing? I don't even know why anybody agreed to this, but she just got a bunch of her student loan forgiven now that she's 50, she was still paying her student loans. So to be able to say, okay, listen, my kids are here, my kids are little, my kids are big. It's only too late if you don't start now. And I remember meeting Dan, literally my kids were 7 and I ran up to him and I was like, we just got to do something. And I'm so thankful that we did because I never in a million years would have ever thought that we were in a position to tell my kids, listen, you have a budget. And what we did too, we both had a budget for they both had a college budgets. She ended up getting a lot more money in scholarships, so then we just put that budget into his, which was wonderful. But we made them apply for everything. Everything, every school, every scholarship. If your kid likes golf, go apply for golf scholarship. We applied for bowling scholarships. I can't even Boy Scout scholarships, Girl Scout scholarships, forget about it. We left no stone unturned and now we're comfortable and we feel good about it. And I'm praying that even the little student debt that my kids are going to have, because I also don't believe in a full ride. I believe they have to have a little skin in the game. So we are making them take out minimal loans because they should. I mean, I don't know. That's my go-between, Dan, as I made them take out a little bit of a loan because they should not. They should be invested financially, emotionally, physically. They should equally be as invested in their education as we are. So clearly we're not paying 50-50. We're doing, 90-10, but I still
Yep.
want to be able to do that for them. And honestly, Dan, I can't thank you and Matt and like seriously, and Rob, poor Rob. That's it. He's lost in his own world of kids now. That's what happens. But
That's
yeah,
right.
if you guys have no questions, then what we'll do is just call Dan tomorrow, or you could text him, or you could send him an email. But it's always great to start a conversation. And I know still to this day, I've never gotten a bill from Dan, although seriously, if he surprises me one day, I would just pay it because it was totally worth it. But yeah, thank God, knock on wood, still no bill. But give Dan a buzz if you don't. And Mara, you have a question?
Yeah, my question is, sorry, of course.
Of course.
Um, sorry about my noise. I started my baby's accounts because I'm crazy. And I'm wondering from the numbers that you gave at the beginning of the call, I know you can't predict the future, right? But
Yes.
what would you say is a good savings rate? I'm literally doing some calculations and I'm wondering like 150 bucks a month. Like
Okay.
I know that everybody's different, Dan, so I don't expect you to give me a sure number,
Okay.
but just from the numbers that you provided at the beginning, it
Okay.
looks like I need to save up for like 250.
You need to, yeah, so it really would depend. So Dan, the question was, is there an average savings per month that you would have kind of like a flat rate savings, right? So if
Like an
you didn't
idea.
want to say like, 20% of your income or 2% of your income, if you didn't want to, if you basically, let's say you have 16 years of savings. Okay, so we have like, let's say about 16 years in general. Mari, I know you have a little bit more, but still. So if you have 16 years of savings, is there a minimum amount that you should be putting away dedicated exclusively to college? Or would you just like, how would you handle that if somebody really wanted to be like, okay, I really want to save towards college?
Yeah, I mean, look, it depends, and it's going to be a different answer for somebody who maybe has an income of $70,000 versus somebody who has an income of 700,000, of that number that you're able to put away, because you have to live your life also.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, look, college needs to be addressed and it needs to be saved for. And I am, when there's limited means, I am less um, enthusiastic about committing specifically to college an amount that we save, because you may need that money for other things and it might not be worth it to build all this money specifically for your kids' college. You might be better off looking at other ways to pay for college. It might be loans, things like that, because at the end of the day, okay, you got to pay for college, but you still have to retire.
Yeah.
You still might need to buy a house. You still, I mean, there's a million other things that you're going to need money for. And, locking money up a certain amount to go to college when you have limited means can put you out of financial balance. So, it's hard to say. That's why I know you don't like the answer, but that's why I kind of go to that 20%. Be saving 20% of your gross. Everyone really can, if you're saving 20% of your gross income, you are living within your means. Okay. And that 20% you're saving, worry less if it's for college or retirement or whatnot. I'd rather you just be saving that money and knowing that you're doing it and it's there. There will be money there for college. There will be money there for retirement. There'll be money for other things. It's just a matter of, when we get closer, figuring out how much we siphon off for each.
Yeah. Excellent. Guys, do we have any other questions, or Mari, was that a good answer for you?
Yeah, that was fine. That was fine. Thank you so much.
You got it. Elizabeth, what do you got, sweetie?
Hi. I read something a long time ago before I had to worry about this, and I'm wondering if it's out of date at this point. But it said that you shouldn't put anything in your kid's name, like not a bank account, not a Roth IRA, to put it in your own name.
Mhm.
Because when you're applying for financial aid, it will look like they have a lot more than they do, and it still might not be enough to make ends meet. We have all those other expenses aside from tuition. So it said just to put it in your own name, like still do it for that purpose for your kids, but just put it in your own name. I was just wondering what your thoughts were
So
on
Dan,
that.
so Dan's having a hard time hearing you guys for whatever reason. So I'll
Oh,
reiterate Elizabeth's question. So she heard a long time ago that it wasn't wise to put any money or anything in your kids' names. So when it came time for college, they would be looking at that instead of anything else. Is that still the recommendation?
Yeah, that could be true. So part of that FAFSA form, they ask about the assets that your children have. And that can count against financial aid, sometimes even more than what the parent has. So that is true. You want to be careful about putting too much assets in your children's name, because it absolutely will affect the financial aid package you get. Yep.
But Elizabeth, if I were you, I would do the life insurance policy for the kids. Seriously, I'm so mad right now. You have no idea that that's got to be something I didn't know. Like Dan, I can't even tell you the amount of stuff I've learned about life insurance that has nothing to do with death, which is amazing, which just entirely has to do with using that as a vehicle for savings. So Elizabeth, that may be something that you may want to look into, about different ways that you can save for your children that are going to be kind of undercover for college folk, is where that is. Okay. All right. Good. She got her answer. All right, guys. It is almost the end of our time. And Dan, for realsies, I love you, buddy. You know that for real. I owe a lot to you, and you're stuck with me whether you like it or not. It's too bad. We're trauma bonded, as they say, for all the years of doing this together.
I love it, Nat. Anytime you will have me back, I will be here.
Oh, you got it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure that you take Dan's information, but I am sure he will be emailing you or calling you and reaching out. He has your information. But if you don't feel like waiting for him and his people, just call him tomorrow for real. Like, it's already 6:55. Let the man go home to Nikki and his kiddos, for God's sake, and the dog. And then tomorrow starts a new day. But let this all settle in and then go from there. But it's a very, very, very smart, responsible thing to do. And I'm not saying that the people that are not here are not being responsible parents, but you guys, odds are still paying off your own student debt, which is why you're trying to figure this out. So I feel like there's a lot of us here today. All right, guys. So thank you so, so much for joining us. If you need anything from me, as always, call me or call Dan. You know where to find me. And the Zoom ID is my cell phone number. As always, you guys know that, or you could just email us at community@twiniversity.com. All right, kids. So go watch Jeopardy if you're on the East Coast, and I'll see you later, alligators. Thanks for joining us. Bye, kids.
Bye.